Hello, my darlings. It's Wednesday, the 27th of November, and I just thought I'd pop on and have a good morning chat with you. And today's subject is why I read. Now, many of you may not know this about me, but I have dyslexia and dyscalculia. Dyslexia is word blindness, and dyscalculia is number blindness, and I have both. And my condition wasn't picked up on until I was starting high school back in the 80s. Now, back in those days, there just wasn't the facilities available to do diagnoses like what I had, and I wasn't diagnosed until much later on in my life, when I, you know, later on, was going into my late 20s. Yeah, when we realised something wasn't quite right. But I knew that I had it, and there was a very wonderful teacher who was my form tutor, and her name was Mrs Maudsley, and she knew that something wasn't quite right as well. And every morning that I was in school for that 5 years, she would take time with me during form tutor time, and she'd sit with me and we would work together, and she taught me techniques to be able to cope with reading and writing and arithmetic. And believe me, if she hadn't, I wouldn't be where I am now, running a very successful business and having a YouTube channel. And I only found out a month ago that this darling lady passed away, and I am so upset. I have been absolutely heartbroken that this darling lady didn't get to see what I've been able to do and her end product, which is me. And I wanted to say to her, Mrs Maudsley, thank you. Mrs Maudsley, you've helped me so much that I have been able to be who I am now. And I'm filling up now thinking about her. But I had to come on and just talk to you about her, because she was just such a remarkable and wonderful woman. Now, when I was in infant school and junior school, I could barely read and write, and it was very, very difficult, and I would get my letters everywhere, and my numbers would be upside down and backwards. It's classic. But because I was a quiet girl, I was put to the back of the classroom, and the teachers were like, well, she's not bothering me, I'm not bothering her. And they would be dealing with the more disruptive and boisterous children. And the quieter I became, the more introvert I became, and I wouldn't ask for help because I was labelled stupid and thick and a dunce, and I was called all those things, and it really does affect your confidence as a child to such an extent that I just would not ask anyone for help. And even now, as an adult, I rarely ask for help because I don't want it to be seen as a form of weakness. And it's taken a long time for me to admit that I had lots of problems in the reading department anyway. And this is one of the reasons why I read as much as I do, and why reading has basically made me a more successful person. and being able to understand the written word is a bit of a given for the job that I'm doing. You know, being here and being me. Mrs Maudsley was literally the most wonderful woman in the entire universe, and she realised that something was incredibly wrong when I couldn't spell my name properly at the age of 13. I had been trying to read, and my mind read as well as it could, considering the numbers were jiggled about and moved all over the place. And she found out that if I saw the letters on a different coloured paper in black and white, it's impossible sometimes. And although I have got better, I have got better with age, and I can read fabulously now, because I have trained my brain to do so. And that is through Mrs Maudsley training my brain to do so. But this wonderful woman would sit with me every morning in farm time, and we would work on workbooks together. And she taught me to spell my name properly, and not all in capitals and lowercase and uppercase, because that's how I was writing. And some of my words were backwards, which was not good. And she was just so patient and so kind. And I opened up to Mrs Maudsley and I said to her, you know, Mrs Maudsley, all my life I've been called thick and stupid and a dunce and a moron and worthless, and told to just get out of the way because I was in their way. And I said, and you don't say those things to me. Why? And she said to me, you know, she said my name, and she said, because you're none of those things, darling. You are worthy. You are good. You are clever. You just have to do things differently. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you have to find a different way to do it. And she gave me so much confidence and really believed in me. And I feel terrible. Now, I didn't know that she was ill and that she died. And it's been really hard. This last month has been so hard. And I do miss her. Sorry. I do miss her. And she was so lovely. But she always used to say to me, if anybody says that you're thick and you're stupid, I want you to turn that around and say to them, oh no, I'm not. I'm far from it, actually. I'm brilliant and I can do anything. And just because you say I can't, well, you just made me want to do it even more. And I'll prove you. I'll prove to you. I'll prove to the world that I can. I can do this. And I did. I did, Mrs Maudsley. I did do it. I set up and I ran my own business. And then I set up and I did my own YouTube channel. And I just wish I could have shown it to you. Because that time that you took to sit with me and to make sure that I could do the basics in life, reading and writing and counting, well, I did. And I've survived and I've coped and I run my own business now, Mrs Maudsley. I can read. I also have 2 daughters, Mrs Maudsley, that I wish you could have met. And they're doing really well. One's just come out of university with a first class degree in children's nursing. And my other little girl, she's charging along and getting ready to do a zoology degree. So, not done bad. Not done bad, kid. But yeah, you're the reason why I read, Mrs Maudsley. You're a really wonderful woman. I've missed you. And I wish you could have seen what I've achieved. I really do. It's just so lovely. And you know, when I've really got into reading, which brings me to James Herbert, as it would, and there I was, looking at the rats and thinking, blimey, that looks fantastic. And I just thought, yes, I'll read that. I mean, the first book that I read, funnily enough, all the way through and understood. I mean, my parents were buying me books all, you know, which is wonderful, but I was struggling to read them. And when I actually understood why I was struggling to read them, when I sat down and actually reread them after Mrs Maudsley taught me to read, I enjoyed them a heck of a sight a lot more. And yeah, it was a revelation, shall I say. The first book I ever read all the way through and understood and could write and put the grammar. I mean, I still struggle with my grammar. So if you ever see messages from me and I've got no full stops, commas, exclamation marks, things, you know, do forgive me, because my brain is working faster than I fingers can type. Yeah, it's a classic thing with dyslexia. Anyway, the first book that I ever read through thoroughly and understood and could, you know, put everything where it should be was called The Little Red Hen. And there's a section in that book that it's right sort of at the end when she's made the bread, and I will grind the corn, I will knead the corn, I will bake the bread, I will eat the bread. And it stayed with me all this time. I'm probably mixed it up again, but you know, that's another classic sign. And I remember that, and I turned it into, everybody said I can't, I won't, I will never achieve anything. Right? I've had that thrown at me my entire life. And I think about the little red hen and I always say, yes, I can. I know I can. And I will show them that I can. And I will. And I will do it. And I will do it so well. And I will be so fantastic that they will never say I'm thick again. But they still do. Yeah, they still do. Because sometimes I do get things jumbled up. And I just have to like go, whoa, look at that again, reread it, switch it round. Yes, right, now I can. Now I know what I'm doing, which is why I'm such a planner and a prepper, because my brain, that is how it works. That's how I survived, if you like, throughout my life. And I just, if it hadn't been for Mrs Maudsley taking that time in the morning, every day, for 5 years, I wouldn't be where I am now. Even, and I will say this, with being quite frank, my parents were unhappily married. They were more argumentative, and because they were putting so much effort into tearing chunks, I suppose, out of each other, then because I was a quiet child, I didn't sort of like cause any problems, and I was sort of very introvert. And I still am an introvert, although you wouldn't believe it because I'm so flipping loud. How can I be a loud introvert? Well, it's a front, right? I come across sometimes as very confident and I know what I'm doing and leave me alone and I'm going to get on with it. That is trauma from the inner me as a child, because I wasn't heard and I wasn't listened to, and I wasn't, I didn't go to people and ask for help. Because basically because they labelled me as thick and stupid and waste of space and not worth the time or the effort, and I believed all that, and I absorbed it, if you like, and then I sort of like retreated in on myself, and I wouldn't go and ask people for help, which is probably why I had such a poor reading age at the age I was. And it took Mrs Maudsley a long, long time to get me to see who I truly was and the potential that I had. And I just think she was just so lovely. And she always said, yes, you can. You know you can. And you will. And you will do it. And you will be brilliant. And I've always held on to that all these years. And I never got to say goodbye. And I'm so sorry. And I hope you weren't in any pain. Really do. Yeah, she was wonderful. But after I learnt to read The Little Red Hen, and I, yes I can, yes I can, yes I can. I can do this. Well, I saw the rats. I saw James Herbert's The Rats. Bearing in mind I'd been reading up to that point anything by Enid Blyton. So to take a jump from Enid Blyton to James Herbert is just night and day, right? I don't believe Timmy the dog ever turned into a savage rat and decided to eat the populace of London. But hey, there we go. Horses for courses and whatever floats your boat. Anyway, so yeah, I reread The Famous Five and The Secret Seven and The Magnificent Four, I think it was. Enid Blyton ones anyway, and after I learned to read, thanks to Mrs Maudsley, I reread the Enid Blyton books and I understood them and I actually enjoyed them. They were good adventures, crime capers, and generally fabulous, and I loved Enid Blyton, and I still do. She will always have a special place in my heart, will Enid Blyton. But once I really got going, I mean, we're talking at the races with the reading, I was a voracious reader. It was as though I had come alive. A light bulb had been switched on in my head and my heart, and I was at the races. I could count, I could do simple arithmetic. I could put sentences together. I could read. Can you imagine what a life-changing moment that was when I could finally spell my own name without fear of being laughed at? Amazing. Amazing. And you know, it was down to that lady. It really was. She was just so amazing. But I saw the James Herbert book and my heart skipped a beat, and I was like, oh my goodness me, joy, my heart, it's my hopes and dreams. I have to read this book. And I can honestly say I was not disappointed. And I have been in love with James ever since then. I would say reading became my escape from my childhood, my unhappiness, my fear of stupidity. And I read and I read and I read, and I keep on reading. And as I'm getting older, I'm not slowing down. I am reading everything I can get my hands on. I adore reading. I love reading out loud. That was another one that was really very difficult for me, was reading out loud, because I would fall over the words. And you may notice when I'm reading out aloud to you that I still fall over my words, and I have to go back and check that and reread it. But that is part of the dyslexia condition, and it will be with me for the rest of my life, but I have got coping strategies to be able to deal with it. And that is down to Mrs Maudsley, because she realised that black and white was not working for me in a small font. It had to be a big font, and it had to be on coloured paper sometimes. But she reprogrammed my brain to do the impossible. And I now can, thanks to her, I have coping strategies. I have the ability to look at something, whether it be a technical drawing or whether it be instructions for something, or just a simple reading book. But I can understand the written word, and that, considering where I'd started from, of not being able to understand anything, is nothing short of a miracle. And I thank that darling lady for taking the time to sit with me and make sure that I can do it. And even when I wasn't in school, she would give me work booklets. She made these for me, and I haven't got any left. I don't know where they went. They must have got lost in the moves of the houses that I've lived in over the years. But they're in here, and that's what counts. And as I'm getting older, I'm realising that I've probably got a lot less in front of me than I do behind me. But you know, you get that when you're reaching 50, you're halfway through, guys. And you need to sometimes take stock of where you are. And I'm just so grateful that I wasn't just thrown away with the rubbish, and that she saw something in me that nobody else could. Potential. And that's what today is all about, potential. And if you see someone struggling, give some of your time to that person, to that child, the adult, whatever, because they might be going through something like I was. And I didn't know what it was called. I couldn't even spell the damn thing, you know? And she was just patient. So be kind and be patient, and take the time with someone if you see them struggling, because you never know, they might be going through something like I did. And be that light for that person. Like be more Mrs Maudsley. Yeah, because she was a fabulous woman. And thanks to her, I've had a life of reading and fun. And it's just been wonderful. And I wouldn't have had, if she hadn't taken the time back then, I certainly won't be sat here right now talking to you about what it means to be able to read. And it's a revelation. It really is, when you first understand the written word, when you've looked at these words all your life and you've never understood them. So I would just count myself as one of the most luckiest girls alive, because I got to meet Mrs Maudsley and she got to be my teacher. Thank you for being you and for making me be me, and for seeing the potential in the little thickie that was in the class, because I'm not, and you knew that. God rest your soul, you wonderful woman. Maybe we'll meet in another life. You never know. Anyway, I say what I always do. Happy readings, darlings, and enjoy. And I really mean it. Bye-bye.